Before this story begins, if you believe love can still surprise you when life has already broken you once, if you believe second chances are real, and if you enjoy stories that touch the heart, challenge the soul, and awaken emotions you thought were gone, then pause for just a second. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the end. Because what this single father did that night changed more than just one life. Now listen carefully. Because this is not a story about temptation. It's a story about healing. When she said it, she didn't smile. You won't last a night with me. The words fell between them like a challenge and a warning. Ethan Parker simply stared at her across the small cafe table, the steam from his untouched coffee rising between them. He had heard flirtation before. He had heard jokes. He had heard bold women make daring promises. But this was different. Her voice wasn't playful. It was calm. Measured. Almost sad. And for a moment, he wondered if she was testing him, or herself. Ethan was 37 years old, a single father, and the kind of man who had stopped believing in reckless nights a very long time ago. His life was built around quiet routines. Early mornings packing lunches. Late nights folding laundry after his son fell asleep. Weekends at soccer fields instead of bars. Desire had become something distant. A memory, buried under responsibility and grief. So when this woman, this stranger with storm-colored eyes and a voice that carried secrets, looked at him and said he wouldn't last a night with her, he didn't feel insulted. He felt curious. Is that a challenge, he finally asked, or a warning? She studied him carefully. I'm not dangerous, she said softly. I'm complicated. Her name was Lena. They had met by accident. Or at least that's what Ethan believed at first. He had gone into the cafe only because his car had broken down 2 blocks away. Rain had soaked his jacket, his phone battery was dead, and he was already late to pick up his son from school. Lena had been sitting alone, sketching in a small notebook, her hair falling over one eye, her fingers stained with charcoal. She noticed him struggling with the broken umbrella and offered him a napkin. That was all. A napkin. But somehow, 15 minutes later, they were sitting together, talking about nothing and everything. She laughed easily, but her eyes rarely did. She asked about his life, and he told her the truth. I'm a dad, he said simply. She paused at that. Then smiled differently. Not flirtatious. Not impressed. Respectful. I like men who belong to someone, she said. Belong? Who have a reason to go home. That sentence stayed with him. Now, an hour later, after stories and silences and the kind of comfort that comes too quickly between strangers, she leaned back and delivered her strange challenge. You won't last a night with me. Ethan should have laughed. Should have brushed it off. Should have stood up and gone back to his life. Instead, he surprised himself. Why would you say that? She hesitated. Then finally said the truth. Because men usually want to leave before morning. Something in her voice cracked just slightly. And suddenly this wasn't about seduction at all. It was about loneliness. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at her hands. At the faint scar on her wrist. At the tired strength in her posture. I don't leave before morning, he said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. No. No. I leave after breakfast. For the first time, she laughed fully. Warm. Genuine. Unexpected. That laugh did something dangerous to him. They walked together after the rain stopped. Not to a bar. Not to her place. Not to his. They walked slowly, talking about childhoods and failures and the strange paths that lead people into each other's lives. Ethan learned that Lena was an artist who painted portraits she never finished. That she had moved cities 3 times in 5 years. That she avoided mirrors and hated birthdays. She learned that Ethan had lost his wife 4 years earlier to a sudden illness. That his son, Noah, was the center of his world. That guilt lived in him every time he thought about wanting something more than fatherhood. When they reached her apartment building, she stopped. This time her voice was softer. "You don't have to come in. I know." She studied him again, searching for something she didn't expect to find. "Most men are already touching me by now," she admitted. "I'm not most men." Silence stretched between them. Then she opened the door. Inside, the apartment was warm and filled with paintings, unfinished faces staring from every wall, all of them different, all of them strangely sad. She poured wine. He took only a few sips. They talked. 4 hours. About fear. About grief. About the way loss changes the body as much as the heart. When she finally touched him, it wasn't hungry. It was gentle. And when he touched her back, it wasn't possessive. It was careful. Clothes came off slowly, without urgency, without games. But something unexpected happened. Ethan stopped. Right there, with her breath warm against his neck, with her fingers tangled in his hair, with desire rising stronger than it had in years. He stopped. She looked at him, confused. "What's wrong?" He swallowed. "I need to tell you something first." Men never stopped for confessions at this moment. She nodded anyway. "My son might wake up sick tonight," he said. "If my phone rings, I will leave immediately." For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly, "That's the most attractive thing anyone has ever said to me." They didn't rush after that. They didn't prove anything. They didn't chase a challenge. They made something slower. Softer. Safer. And when sleep finally took them, tangled but peaceful, Lena whispered something into the dark. "Maybe you will last the night after all." Ethan smiled. But neither of them knew that this night was only the beginning of a test far greater than desire. Because by morning, a phone call would come. A secret would surface. And one choice would change both their lives forever. Morning arrived quietly. Not with alarm clocks or sunlight through curtains, but with the soft rhythm of breathing beside him. Ethan woke slowly, disoriented, his arm heavy across warm skin, his cheek pressed against hair that smelled faintly of paint and lavender. For one fragile moment, he forgot where he was, forgot the years of loneliness, forgot the shape of grief that usually greeted him when he opened his eyes. Then memory returned. Lena. The cafe. The challenge. The night that had unfolded not with urgency, but with tenderness. She was still asleep, her face relaxed, one hand resting on his chest as if she had claimed it in the night without realizing. Her lashes cast shadows against pale skin, and there was something almost painfully vulnerable about the way she slept, unguarded, unperforming, simply human. Ethan did not move. He had learned, as a father, that stillness could be sacred. This moment felt like that. A pause in time. A borrowed peace. Then his phone vibrated on the bedside table. Once. Twice. 3 times. His heart tightened instantly. Only one person ever called him more than once before sunrise. He reached for the phone, already sitting up, already bracing himself for bad news. "Noah," he whispered into the receiver. The voice that answered was not his son's. It was the school nurse. "Mr. Parker," she said gently, "your son fainted during morning assembly. He's awake now, but we think you should come right away." The room seemed to tilt. "I'm on my way," he said, already standing, already pulling on his jeans with shaking hands. He ended the call and turned back toward the bed. Lena was awake now. Watching him. Something in his expression told her everything. "Your son," she said softly. He nodded. "I have to go." She sat up, the sheet falling loosely around her shoulders, but there was no embarrassment in her posture. Only concern. "Is he okay?" "I don't know yet." She was on her feet immediately. "Take my car," she said. "I can. My keys are on the table. It's faster than walking back to where your car broke down." There was no hesitation in her voice. No possessiveness. No disappointment. Only instinctive generosity. He paused, struck by it. "You don't even know me," he said. "I know you left in the middle of the night because your child might need you," she replied. "That tells me enough." He wanted to say something more. Something meaningful. Something that matched the strange gravity he felt between them. Instead, he simply said, "Thank you." And then he was gone. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Ethan found Noah sitting on a bed, pale but alert, a juice box in his hands, his dark hair damp with sweat. "Dad," Noah said weakly, trying to smile. Ethan crossed the room in 3 steps and knelt in front of him, hands gripping the thin blanket as if grounding himself. "What happened?" "I stood up too fast," Noah shrugged. "Coach says I skipped breakfast again." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Guilt surged, sharp and immediate. He had been so distracted lately. So tired. So lonely. "I'm sorry, buddy," he said. The doctor explained dehydration, exhaustion, nothing serious, but recommended rest, observation, and fewer skipped meals. Relief washed through Ethan so hard his hands trembled. Only after the danger passed did he realize something else. He was wearing yesterday's clothes. Smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. And sitting in a hospital chair, thinking about a woman he had met by accident less than 12 hours ago. He checked his phone. No messages. Of course not. They had not exchanged numbers. Had not planned anything beyond a night. He told himself that was normal. Healthy. Safer. But when Noah finally fell asleep, exhaustion pulling him under, Ethan found his thoughts drifting back to storm-colored eyes and unfinished paintings. He wondered if she was awake yet. If she regretted opening the door. If she thought he had simply disappeared. The idea bothered him more than it should have. So after settling Noah at home with cartoons and soup, Ethan did something impulsive. He drove back to the cafe. Not because he expected to find her there. But because he needed to stand where it had begun. And remind himself that the night had been real. The barista recognized him. "Back again?" He nodded, suddenly feeling foolish. "Did the woman I was with yesterday come in this morning?" The barista smiled. "She was here an hour ago. Left you this." He slid a folded napkin across the counter. Ethan's breath caught. On it, in charcoal-smudged handwriting, was a single line. "I knew you would leave before morning. I'm glad I was wrong." Below it, an address. His heart pounded. Not with lust. With possibility. Meanwhile, across the city, Lena stood in her apartment staring at one of her unfinished portraits. For the first time in years. She picked up her brush again. And painted a man's face. A tired man. A gentle man. A man whose eyes carried both loss and devotion. She did not know if she would ever see him again. But something about the way he had left, without excuses, without seduction, without promises, had stirred a dangerous hope in her. And hope was something she had sworn never to trust again. Because long before Ethan Parker walked into her life, another man had stayed the night. And left behind a secret that would soon change everything. Ethan stood outside the address written on the napkin for a long time before he knocked. It was an old brick building tucked between a bookstore and a closed flower shop, the kind of place that carried stories in its walls. 3 floors. Narrow balconies. Windows crowded with plants and curtains and quiet lives. He told himself he was only returning the car. Only being polite. Only closing a moment that had already passed. But his heart did not believe that. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. What if she wasn't home? What if she had already decided the night meant nothing? What if he was about to embarrass himself in the most vulnerable way possible? At the 3rd floor, he stopped. Apartment 3B. He raised his hand. And hesitated. For the first time since his wife had died, he felt something dangerous stirring inside him. Hope. Before he could lose his nerve, the door opened. Lena stood there barefoot, wearing an oversized shirt splattered with paint, her hair pulled into a messy knot, charcoal streaked across her cheek. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then she smiled. Not the guarded smile from the cafe. Not the teasing one from the night before. This one was relieved. "You came back," she said softly. "I borrowed your car," he replied. "Felt like I should return more than just the keys." She stepped aside immediately. "Come in." Inside, the apartment looked different in daylight. Brighter. Messier. More alive. Canvases leaned against every wall now, new ones, half-painted faces emerging from white space. All of them unmistakably him. Not exact. But emotionally accurate. Ethan stopped short. "You painted me." She froze. "I didn't mean for you to see those yet." Yet? The word escaped him before he could stop it. Color rose in her cheeks. "I mean, I paint what stays with me," she said quietly. "And you stayed." Something warm spread through his chest. They sat at the small kitchen table, closer than strangers but farther than lovers, 2 people carefully balancing on the edge of something undefined. He told her about Noah. About the hospital. About the fear that still lingered in his bones even after relief arrived. She listened with full attention, elbows on the table, chin resting in her hands, eyes never leaving his face. "You're a good father," she said. "I try. That's more than most people do." Silence followed. Comfortable. Heavy. Finally, he asked the question that had been sitting in his chest since morning. "Why did you say men leave before morning?" Her fingers stilled around her mug. She did not answer right away. Then she stood, crossed the room, and lifted a canvas from the wall. She turned it toward him. It was not a portrait of him. It was a woman in a hospital bed, pale and thin, eyes closed, a newborn resting on her chest. Ethan's breath caught. "That's me," Lena said quietly. The room seemed to shrink around them. "You have a child?" She nodded. "A daughter." Shock rushed through him, followed by confusion, then something deeper, respect, maybe, or recognition. "Where is she?" Lena hesitated. Then whispered, "Not with me." The words fell like glass between them. She sat slowly. "My husband died 3 years ago," she said. "Car accident. Drunk driver." Ethan felt the familiar echo of grief answer inside him. "We were young. Poor. In love in that reckless way you only get once." Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. "When he died, I broke," she continued. Not loudly. Quietly. In ways no one noticed until it was too late. She looked at her hands. "I had postpartum depression. Severe. Hallucinations. Panic. Fear that I would hurt her without meaning to." Ethan leaned forward instinctively. "I asked for help," she said. "And the system decided the safest place for her was not with me." His heart tightened painfully. She lives with my sister now, Lena finished. In another city. She's healthy. Loved. Safe. And you? He asked gently. She smiled sadly. I'm learning how to be someone again. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was sacred. Two people sitting in the shared ruins of loss, recognizing each other without needing explanation. That's why men leave, she said finally. Because eventually they ask about my life, and when they hear this, they look at me like I'm broken. Ethan did not speak. He stood. Walked to her. And knelt in front of her chair. You're not broken, he said firmly. She looked at him, startled. You survived something impossible, he continued. And you protected your child by letting her go. That's not weakness. Tears welled in her eyes. That's love. She broke then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, finally, in front of someone who did not turn away. He held her while she cried, her forehead pressed against his shoulder, her hands gripping his shirt as if anchoring herself to the present. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red, but clearer than before. Most men leave after that, she whispered. Ethan surprised them both. I'm still here. Something changed in the air. Not desire. Something deeper. Trust. Later, as afternoon sunlight filled the room, they lay on the couch together, fully clothed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing slow circles on her arm. It was intimate in a way sex had never been. Do you miss her? He asked. Every day. Do you see her? Once a month. His chest ached for her. For the empty arms. For the birthdays watched from a distance. For the courage it took to wake up anyway. You're brave, he said. She smiled faintly. So are you. He thought of Noah. Of lunchboxes and bedtime stories. Of how close he had come to losing the only thing that kept him standing. Maybe this meeting was not accidental at all. But fate had one more test waiting. Because that evening, Lena's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. And went completely still. It's my sister, she whispered. Fear crept into Ethan's chest. She answered slowly. Yes? Her sister's voice came through loud enough for Ethan to hear fragments. Hospital. Accident. It's your daughter. Lena's face drained of color. No, she breathed. Ethan stood instantly. What happened? She covered the phone, eyes wide with terror. She's been in an accident, Lena whispered. They're taking her to the emergency room. The room shattered into motion. Keys. Shoes. Breath caught halfway between prayer and panic. As they rushed for the door, Ethan realized something profound and frightening. This was no longer a woman he barely knew. This was a mother in pain. And without thinking, he took her hand. And did not let go. The hospital lights were too bright. Too white. Too unforgiving. They made every fear visible. Lena walked beside Ethan through sliding glass doors, her hands still locked in his, her breath shallow and uneven, her thoughts racing faster than her feet could follow. She was fine this morning, she kept whispering. She was laughing on the phone, she told me she lost another tooth. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. She's strong, he said. Kids always are. But even as he said it, fear crawled into his own chest. Because he knew this terror. The helplessness of waiting behind doors while someone you loved lay vulnerable inside. They found Lena's sister pacing the hallway, her face pale, her eyes red. She was hit by a bike, her sister said quickly. Not badly, but she hit her head. They're doing scans now. Lena's knees nearly gave out. Ethan caught her before she fell. He guided her into a chair and knelt in front of her, just as he had done earlier that day in a different kind of crisis. "Breathe with me," he said calmly. She tried. Failed. Tried again. Slowly, painfully, her breathing followed his. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Time stretched cruelly, bending around fear until it lost meaning. Ethan stayed beside her the entire time. He did not check his phone. Did not step away. Did not loosen his grip. And somewhere in the waiting, Lena began to realize something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. She was not alone. When the doctor finally came, Lena stood so fast she nearly collided with him. "Is she alive?" The doctor blinked, startled by the raw panic in her voice. Yes, she's fine," he said quickly. "Minor concussion. No bleeding. We'll keep her overnight for observation, but she's awake and asking for her mother." Lena collapsed against the wall, tears flooding freely now, relief shaking her whole body. "She wants to see me. Very much." The doctor hesitated, then added gently, "Only one person can go in for now." Lena turned instinctively to Ethan. And hesitated. For the first time since she met him, fear returned, not fear for her child, but fear of letting someone too close. "You don't have to come," she said softly. He understood what she really meant. "You don't have to stay in this story." He answered without hesitation. "I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and followed the nurse down the hallway alone. The room was small. Machines hummed quietly. Monitors blinked gently. And in the bed lay a little girl with dark curls and sleepy eyes, a bandage on her forehead, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Mama," she whispered. Lena froze. She had not heard that word in person in almost 2 years. She crossed the room on trembling legs and knelt beside the bed. "I'm here, my love," she said, voice breaking. The child reached out immediately. Lena took her tiny hand, pressing it to her cheek, breathing her in, memorizing the warmth as if afraid it might vanish again. "I was scared," the girl murmured. "I know," Lena whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Tears slipped silently down her face as she stayed there, stroking her daughter's hair, telling her stories, promising she would not leave tonight. For the first time since she had lost custody, she was allowed to stay. And it felt like being given back a piece of her soul. Outside, Ethan sat alone in the hallway. His phone buzzed in his pocket. "Noah." He answered immediately. "Dad? I'm here, buddy. You coming home soon?" Ethan closed his eyes. "I'm at the hospital with a friend," he said carefully. "Are you okay?" "Yeah. Grandma's here. She made pancakes for dinner." Ethan smiled faintly. "Of course she did." A pause. "Dad?" "Yeah. Are you lonely?" The question pierced straight through him. He swallowed. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I don't want you to be lonely forever," Noah said simply. Something warm and painful bloomed in Ethan's chest. "Me neither," he said quietly. After the call ended, Ethan sat back and stared at the far wall. And finally allowed himself to admit what he had been fighting all day. This woman was already changing him. And that terrified him. Because love, once lost, did not come back easily. And when it did, it came with risk. Late that night, Lena returned to him. Her eyes were tired but peaceful. "She's sleeping now," she said. "They're keeping her overnight, but she's going to be fine." Relief flooded his face. "I'm glad." They sat together in silence, shoulder to shoulder, two exhausted souls sharing quiet gratitude. After a while, Lena spoke softly. "I never told you the hardest part," she said. What? Letting her go wasn't the worst part. He waited. Believing she would forget me was. He turned to her fully now. But she didn't, she continued. She called me Mama without hesitation. She still knows my voice. Her lips trembled. Maybe I'm not as lost as I thought. He reached for her hand. You're not lost at all. Their eyes met. This time, the silence between them was charged, not with desire, but with a dangerous, fragile truth. They were standing at the edge of something real. Something that could heal them. Or break them all over again. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he said honestly. She smiled faintly. Then why does this feel right? He had no answer. Only certainty. That some things could not be reasoned away. They simply arrived. Later, as they walked out of the hospital together, night air cool against their skin, Lena stopped suddenly. There's something you should know about me, she said. He turned. What? She hesitated. Then spoke. My sister is moving away in 2 months. And your daughter? She asked, if she could come live with me again. Ethan's breath caught. That's incredible. Yes, she said softly. And terrifying. She looked at him with open vulnerability. Because if I try, my life will change completely. He understood immediately. No more drifting. No more running. No more easy escapes. Motherhood would reclaim her fully. And whatever this was between them would be tested by reality. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered. He thought of Noah. Of packed lunches. Of bedtime fears and small hands trusting him with everything. And then he said the bravest thing he had said in years. You don't have to be ready alone. She stared at him, stunned. You barely know me, she said. I know enough, he replied. Her eyes filled again, but this time with something brighter than sorrow. Hope. And in that quiet parking lot, under hospital lights, 2 broken adults made a silent decision. To stop running. And see where love might dare to lead. 2 months later, autumn arrived quietly. Not in dramatic storms or sudden cold, but in small changes, leaves softening into gold, evenings growing longer, shadows stretching gently across familiar streets. Life had been changing just as quietly for Ethan and Lena. Not fast. Not recklessly. Carefully. With courage. The first change came when Lena's daughter, Mira, moved back in with her. It happened on a Sunday morning. 2 suitcases. 1 pink backpack. A stuffed rabbit that had been stitched together more times than either of them could count. Lena stood in the doorway of her apartment, hands shaking, watching her sister hug Mira goodbye. Call me if you need anything, her sister whispered. I will, Lena promised. Then the door closed. And suddenly, she was a mother again. Not in theory. In reality. Mira explored the apartment with wide curiosity, opening drawers, inspecting paintings, climbing onto chairs to peer at canvases. You made all these? She asked. Yes, Lena said softly. Do you make people? Sometimes. Mira studied one portrait, Ethan's face, unfinished but unmistakable. Who's that? Lena paused. A friend, she said. Mira smiled. I like his eyes. Lena laughed through tears. So did she. The second change came when Ethan introduced Lena to Noah. He waited longer than he wanted to. Not because he doubted her. But because he knew what introductions meant in a child's heart. When the day finally came, he took them to the park. Neutral ground. Open space. Room to breathe. Noah was nervous. Lena was terrified. Mira held her hand tightly. Ethan knelt beside his son. "This is Lena," he said gently. "And this is Mira." Noah smiled shyly. "Hi." "Hi," Mira answered, hiding half behind Lena's leg. The first minutes were awkward. Stilted. Careful. Then Noah pulled out a soccer ball. "Wanna play?" Myra's face lit up instantly. And just like that, children did what adults struggled to do. They trusted. Laughter filled the park. Shoes flew off. Rules dissolved. Ethan and Lena sat on a bench, watching their worlds touch for the first time. "I'm scared," Lena whispered. "Me too," he admitted. But they smiled anyway. Because fear no longer felt like a warning. It felt like proof something mattered. The third change came quietly. One night, when the children were asleep, Ethan stood in Lena's apartment again, the same place where everything had begun, but the air was different now. He knew her coffee order. She knew how he took his silence. They knew each other's scars by name. They moved together slowly, not in urgency, but in familiarity. And when they finally lay tangled beneath the sheets, breathing in sync, something unexpected happened again. They stopped. Not because of doubt. Because of emotion. Lena turned to him, eyes shining in the dark. "Do you remember what I said the first night?" she whispered. "You said I wouldn't last a night with you." She smiled. "I was wrong." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You weren't testing me," he said. "You were protecting yourself." "Yes," she admitted. "And now?" She hesitated. Then said softly, "Now I'm hoping you'll last longer than a night." His heart tightened painfully, in the best way. "I plan to," he said simply. And this time, when they made love, it was not about escape. Not about proving anything. Not about forgetting pain. It was about choosing someone. Again and again. In the quiet. In the ordinary. In the hard days that would surely come. Weeks later, the real test arrived. Not passion. Not fear. But reality. Lena was offered a teaching position at a small art school. In another city. 2 hours away. It was everything she had worked for. Stability. Purpose. A future. She told Ethan that night, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do," she said. He felt the old panic rise, the instinct to protect himself by letting go first. Distance. Complications. Children. This was exactly the kind of moment where love usually failed. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Ethan spoke. "What do you want?" "I want my daughter safe," she said. "I want to teach. I want you." He nodded slowly. "And if the job is part of that?" She looked at him, eyes wet. "Then I'm afraid choosing it means losing you." He stood. Walked to her. Took her hands. "Lena," he said gently, "if loving you means supporting your life, then that's not losing you." Tears fell freely now. "You'd let me go?" "No," he said. "I'd find a way to come with you." Her breath caught. "What about Noah?" "I've already thought about it," he admitted. "The school there is good. My job can transfer. It won't be easy." He smiled softly. "But nothing worth keeping ever is." She broke then, fully, openly, beautifully, crying into his chest, overwhelmed not by loss, but by being chosen. The move took time. Paperwork. Fear. Endless conversations with children and grandparents and teachers. But slowly, a new life formed. 2 bedrooms became 4. 2 schedules became 1. Two wounded families learned how to become something whole. And one quiet night, months later. After the children were asleep. After dishes were done. After exhaustion softened into peace. They stood on their small balcony, city lights blinking below. Lena leaned against Ethan, tracing lazy circles on his arm. "Do you ever think about that first night?" she asked. "All the time," he admitted. She smiled. "I said you wouldn't last a night with me." "And?" She looked up at him, eyes warm, voice steady. "You lasted a lifetime." He kissed her forehead. "And you," he said softly, "taught me how to begin again." Below them, the city breathed. Above them, stars watched quietly. And inside that simple apartment, two children slept peacefully. Two adults healed gently. And one love story continued. Final message to the viewer. If this story touched your heart, if you believe second chances are real, if you believe love can find you even after loss, then remember this. The bravest thing a broken heart can do is trust again. Like the video Red Heart. Subscribe to the channel bell. And never stop believing that sometimes, the night you fear the most becomes the beginning of everything.